All right, so let's get started and create our first Angular app. So the first thing I'm going to do is I need to install Angular CLI. Okay, so I'm going to go to my integrated terminal. I was going to say turtle. I don't know where that came from. Anyway, so view terminal right here, or control and backtick. And I'm in Visual Studio Code in case that wasn't pretty clear. I'm going to navigate to my desktop because that's where I'm going to keep this particular folder. You might want to keep it in your documents folder, whatever you want to do. But I'm going to put mine in my desktop. So CD space and desktop to get into the desktop. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to install something called Angular CLI. And let me just write it out. NPM. So I'm going to use my Node Package Manager to install. I'm going to do a -G, which says globally, which means that install it into my whole system rather than to just this project. So that way I'll only have to do this one time and I won't have to worry about it again. And use the @ and I'm going to go into Angular's core files, which is what the @Angular is, /and CLI. So what this does is it gives me a command line tool that we'll be utilizing in order to create parts of our components and Angular. I guess components is the best word for now. So this might take a few minutes. I'm going to put the video on pause and I will come back when mine is completed. All right, so I'm back. And it looks like it completed, so I got this updated one package. So that means that now if I type in ng, which is commands specific to Angular, and I'm going to hit enter just to make sure that it installed. If you get something like unavailable or something like I don't recognize what ng is, then that's not a good indication something didn't work properly there. But now what I'm getting is some of the commands that are available because I've installed the CLI component of Angular. And so these are tools that we will use or can use. In fact, we'll use this one right away. All right, so now that I have the CLI tools installed, I don't have to do that again. It'll always be available to me. So the thing I'm going to do next is I'm going to create a new Angular project. And it looks like I can use this keyword new, creates a new workspace and an initial Angular app. That sounds like fun. So I'm going to do ng. And I'm going to type the word new like it suggests, and I'm going to type in the name of my project. So this is going to be called First Project, and that seems applicable. So I'm going to hit enter and I'm going to wait a little bit longer. So I'm going to put this on pause again. Oh, wait, not yet. Okay, so would you like to add Angular routing? At this point I'm going to say no, so I'm going to add an N. That's something we'll deal with next week, but for now I'm just going to say no. Which style sheet format would you like to use? If you know how to use Sass, then you might want to use that, but I think right now we're just going to use CSS. So I'm going to take that as the default. It's highlighted in blue, so I'm just going to hit enter, and then it's creating it. And this is where I'm going to go on pause. I'll be right back. All right, that took a couple of minutes to run, so now we're back. And looks like some things happened. There was all kinds of things that came up. Packages, blah, blah, blah. All right, so now I'm going to do a dir to get a directory listing of my desktop. And somewhere in here, there's a Dr. Pepper PY, probably not applicable to this project. So it looks like it created a directory, which is what in File Explorer we think of as a folder, but it's actually a directory, and there's First Project. So I want to go into that directory. I'm going to do a CD space, and then the name of that directory, which is first. I don't want to type the whole thing out, so I'm going to hit the tab key. Tab key is going to try and find a pattern that matches what I typed. Looks like if I tab again, and you can't see me tabbing again, but there's nothing else that matches FIR, so nothing else is populating. I have some that have several tests, for example. So if I did CD TES, as you can see, there's several TESs. So this hitting the tab would toggle through the various ones that match that pattern, and so you can hit enter when you find the one you're interested in. But I'm going to do First Project, there it is, and I'm going to hit enter and do a dir. Oh my goodness, there's all kinds of things. So at this point then, let's look at it in I'm going to open it up here in my workspace. So I'm going to open folder, and I'm going to open up that project and click select folder, and I should see, wow, a whole bunch of files. So just to double check, I'm in the correct path down here in my terminal, and in my Explorer I can see that I've got a whole bunch of files that were installed on my behalf. So node modules should look familiar. That's all of our dependencies, so there's lots of files in there. What else should look familiar? We should see a package JSON file. That should look familiar from our last week's work. You should also see a gitignore file, which should be comfortable or familiar from last week. But there's a whole lot more files that will be ignored this time. But one of them is our dependency folder, which is the node modules folder, and we did that in last week's assignment. So just kind of rehashing some stuff that we've gone over already. All right, so it turns out that the first thing I want to do is I just want to make sure that this is working, and there's some default files that were installed for me. But now that we're running Angular, we can't just open up, in fact you won't see just a basic HTML file. If we look in our source folder, this is where a lot of our project files are going to be residing. This is where we're going to do a lot of our work. So I'm going to click on SRC and see if anything looks familiar. Where there's an index.html, boy, that's something I certainly remember something about. But if you look at the index.html, it's pretty basic, right? There's our doc type, there's our head, there's a body. This is a directive, so I started on that on the last video. So this is a user-defined element that I will show you how that works later. It should reference some kind of component, and I will elaborate on that, but I'm just bringing it to your attention. So my index.html is pretty plain. There doesn't seem to be much there. So you don't have the ability anymore just to open that up in your browser. Now we're going to actually do some compiling and open it up in our browser. So in other words, I'm going to open up, Angular comes with its own server, local server. So if I type in ng for, again, Angular, and then serve, and then -o. So this says, Angular, please start up a server, and then open it in my default browser. So Angular, open up a server, and then the -o, open it in a local browser, in my default browser. So I'm going to hit enter at this time. You'll see it compiling. Eventually, let's sit and talk. There we go. Now it's compiling. It's building some things, building some modules. Interesting. Okay, we'll look at that later. Shouldn't take too much longer. Okay, and then you can't see it because it came up in my other window, but there is our first app, our first project is running. So wow, it said HTML and there was just that one directive, that one user-defined element, but look at all the stuff that's on this page. Where did that all come from? Well, we'll see how that all works soon enough. Also notice that it's running the local host, so that's a word for utilize the local server, and then it's running it on port 4200. So that's interesting. Okay, I'm going to close this and just want to bring your attention to one other place, and then we'll stop this video there. Looks like there's styles.css, not much there. Okay. Where I wanted to go was, to package.json. I want to bring your attention to the package.json file, and I want to share with you this word start. So if you see one of the properties in this JSON file is start, and it says ng-serve. Well, isn't that something we just got done typing? That's how we started up our server on the command line. So what I'm going to do is looks like my server is still running down here in my terminal, so I'm going to Control-C to stop that from running, and I'm hit yes, stop that file. All right, so a moment ago at the command line we typed in ng-serve, and then we did a space and -o in order to open up our browser. Well, it turns out that start is a keyword, a variable word, if you will. In other words, I'm going to put -o here, so that's exactly like we just did a moment ago. And now if I save that, and I come back down into my command prompt here, and instead I just type in npm start, whatever is on this line will run, so I don't have to type the whole thing in. I can type in npm start now, and it will look at that line in the JSON file, and it's going to start my server and recompile, and eventually, after much text jumping, and over in my other window, which you can't see, coming over here, you'll see that that app actually loaded. So Good news. All right, so in the next video, we will create our first component.